Hi everyone, welcome. Let's make a start. Welcome to the Living with Young People webinar. Thank you very much for making your time to be available. We've got a lot of people, which is great to see. My name's Phil and I'm from the South Australian Department of Human Services with the Parenting and Family Support Program team. And joining me tonight are two other members of the team, and their names are Fiona and Eve, and we'll be sharing the delivery of the content this evening. All three of us are parents, and between us we have extensive experience working across primary school, high school and community settings, so we look forward to sharing some of that experience with you this evening. But before going any further, what I'd really like to do is acknowledge the country that we're in and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we work and live. We also acknowledge the continuing relationship and connection that the traditional custodians have with land, water and community, and we pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. A little bit about our team. We've been delivering parenting programs in the community for quite some time now, and recently have begun the process of transferring that information to this online format to try and make the information as accessible as possible to as many people as we can. For tonight's format, we're going to be going for approximately 1 hour. All three of us will share delivery of the content. While we're doing that, your microphones will be muted. We'll have some interaction through the chat function. We'll be asking you to submit comments at different times, and we'll also be having a poll. And we're happy for you to submit questions, but with the number of people that we have, we may not be able to answer everybody's questions. So the plan is that at the end, we'll get to a few of the questions, and if you can be understanding of that, we'll be following up with a follow-up email, providing you with links to the resources we'll refer to, and we hopefully can get to answer a few more of the questions using that particular format. Now, our parenting programs align with information developed by Parenting SA, and this webinar is based on the Living with Young People Parent Easy Guide, and it provides general parenting information to parents and carers of young people aged between 12 and 18 years. When I say general, what I'm really highlighting there is that we are providing information that's going to help us create a really positive, strong foundation to build those relationships and connections that we all want to have with our young people. And we're also hoping to give you some information that will give you some extra understanding of what young people may be going through developmentally during this interesting time in their life. There are a range of other Parent Easy guides, and they can be located on the Parenting SA website, and that's located at parenting.sa.gov.au. And there you'll find a range of other pegs, but including 10 specifically for teenagers, for young people. So I'd really recommend when you get a chance to have a look at that site. And there are also some other great video resources located there too. In this webinar, we're going to be talking about parenting teenagers. Some of those fun times that we can have with teens, and also some of those other times which may not be quite so fun. And I'm sure we all have those. And really what they are quite normal, and we call this the everyday ups and downs of parenting. We hope you find this webinar and the information useful and helpful. We also understand though that some parents and some families may be going through some very difficult times, complex issues, and that can feel sometimes overwhelming. If you're feeling that at all, we do really recommend that you seek professional additional support for that. And at the end of the webinar, we'll be providing the Parenting SA website, and you can hopefully find some other resources there. So let's continue into the webinar now. If we look at the slide, and you should be able to see a question on that: what is the best thing about your young person? So I want you to think about what that actually means. What is the best thing about your young person? And even if some not so positives come to mind, and that can sometimes happen, park those to one side, because this is really about being positive. What impresses you about your young person? What do you love about them? What do you enjoy about them? It could be about your son, your daughter. It might be about a teenager that you're caring for in your home. And if you could use the chat function here now, and I was going to say jot down, but actually type in a positive word that describes your young person, that'd be great. Resilience, I can see them coming through, and people hopefully can follow these through the chat function. Funny, sense of humour, social, kind, these are all great, and keep them coming as you can follow these through, and I'll ask Fee to bring up the next slide. And some of these are going to match as we float through some other wonderful attributes. There's one spirited and caring. We're seeing funny and loving on the screen here, loud. And all of these, as these come through, I'm just going to highlight that these are all positive attributes young people have. And hopefully this shows that sometimes, you know, there are these negative stereotypes that are out in their community, which can sometimes get a lot of airplay. And these are often perpetuated in the media with those quick news grabs about another drunken party or another driving incident or something, some terms of conflict. And sure, those things can happen, but really when we stop to think about it, young people get through their teen years really well, and we don't hear about that very often. So these teen years are such an exciting time of change for our young people. They're learning lots of new skills, they're finding out new interests, they're finding out a lot about life, and they're making new friends and creating new relationships. It's exciting. I'm not sure if any of you have taught your young ones to drive yet. I've got a 25-year-old son and a 20-year-old daughter and have been through that. And I can remember when they first got in the car, how exciting it was for them. Also pretty exciting for me as we approached intersections, hoping they would stop in time. As my knuckles slightly went white, my foot pressed through the floor, but we did. There's the exciting times of when they meet, you know, their first boyfriend or girlfriend and that new romance, and making their way in the world by learning and getting their first job and earning their own money. And that's pretty exciting for them. And also for us, they don't ask us maybe for quite so much cash. So if we can try and focus on these things when things are difficult, it just helps us balance out some of those when things get a bit difficult. Keep remembering the positives. So we've had a little bit of a look at our young person. So now I'd like you to think a bit about you as the parent. Many of us sometimes get used to doing things a certain way, and I'm no exception. Sometimes I can hear myself respond in a situation and it's almost out of habit before I can even think. And then I sometimes think about the influence in my parenting, and I wonder, you know, I hear maybe my parents and what they used to say and do in certain situations. I'm thinking about what the media might say sometimes, or what other friends and family are saying. And all of that shapes and influences what we do as parents. But how much or how often do we take the time to reflect on what we're doing and how things are going? Are they going the way we would like them to go? So if we can actually find that time just to stop, pause, and what we call is take a long-term view of parenting. What do we want to achieve? What are the types of relationships that we would like to have with our young person? And what can we do and how can we support them in getting there? So with those two questions on the screen above, I'd like you just to think about that, take a moment to pause. What is your role as a parent carer of a young person? And what do you think they need from you? Just take a moment. I can see some lovely comments coming through. And really, I guess what we're asking people and consider is actually the reality is we need to be flexible and we need to adapt our approaches as parents. Our children are growing up, their needs are changing really quickly. You've probably been adapting all along, and I think back to when I came home with my little bundles from hospital and they were so dependent and so needy and they needed me for everything, and then they quickly become toddlers and start walking and talking, then off to school, pre-teens and now teens. And it's fast tracking. They just want to become independent, be like us and make their way in the world. So it's a time of big change for them. And if we can recognize this and recognize that our child is growing up and working their way towards becoming their own selves, can really help, because they are wanting to become an independent, competent adult, and that's what we would like for them too. So your role's probably changing from one of managing every single moment in their life to one that's more of an influencer. And we talk about sharing power, and for some people that can sound a bit scary. Really what we're trying to do is support our young ones to be involved in decision making, be involved in problem solving, so they can, with our support and guidance, get to make good, healthy decisions, but get the skills to be able to, as they get to that stage of leaving home, be independent, be able to sort things out for themselves. It's a time when we need to maybe let go a bit. And I think back to when we go off to school, fast track to when they get in the car and drive and they're on their P's and you're no longer there and it's a co-pilot. I thought about when my daughter turned 18 and headed off overseas. I wasn't there. All of this is the gradual letting go. So it can mean some of us might have to change or adapt what we do. And if you want to do things differently, remember any change can take time. It won't always work out the way you want the first time or at all sometimes, but changing what you do is going to change what your child, your young person does. Now, your parenting will need to adapt as your young person becomes more independent, but it's so important that you remember they need connection with you now more than ever. And I know sometimes it may not seem like that, but I know underneath they all do. They really want that. As Michael Gross says, he's a parenting expert. Our job as parents is to make ourselves redundant. And I kid you not, today I feel quite redundant. My daughter packed up and has made her way to her first rental arrangement in the big wide world. Renting, paying away, working, studying. So I'm having to do a bit of adjusting tonight to get used to that situation. So with our role as parents in mind, please let's have a look at what's going on for young people, and I'll hand over to Fee now.
Thanks, Phil. So, as Phil mentioned, yes, it's a big transition time for our young people. There's certainly a lot going on for them. It can be exciting, it can be really strange, really challenging times for them. So let's just have a quick look at what might be happening for them. And you hopefully should see some images pop up on your screen. So they're trying to work out who they are in the world, developing their own unique sense of identity. And they're working out their own values. They're learning lots of new skills, and they're having a go at lots of things and finding what inspires them and where they might want to head in life. And it can be really exciting for them, and it can be really challenging too. And there's likely to be ups and downs. It's a time of contradictions as well. Young people say they want lots of freedom, and they do need to try out freedoms, but they still need the security of their family, even though they're not likely to say it much, and it may not seem so sometimes from their attitude. Some teens can feel quite unsure of themselves, even though they may seem to have confidence and bravado and that grown-up attitude. Sometimes they are inwardly feeling a bit uncertain about themselves and, maybe anxious or nervous. So as parents, they need us to be dependable and reliable and to provide a secure base in their lives. And it will really benefit them if we have a good connection with them and if there is trust and respect between you. But even if your relationship is rocky at times, don't give up on them or your relationship, as you're the best resource that they have. So with all the new and challenging things that they are doing, there is also a lot going on in young people's bodies and brains, as you may well already be aware. And it might help to explain some of your young person's behaviour and allow us to respond with more empathy and understanding and to be more effective parents. So let's have a look at what's going on for them. So they're going through puberty, and I'm sure you've all heard of it, and you may remember what that was like for you, or you may have chosen to, shut that out of your memory, depending on your experiences or how you went through your teenage years. You might remember feeling clumsy, awkward, could have been great embarrassment, having strong emotions that can change really quickly, perhaps your first crush on someone or those early sexual feelings. And puberty involves changes in hormones, big changes in hormones, and these are really necessary to trigger the essential growth spurts that we have, to trigger the essential body changes that we have, and to trigger the essential sexual development. And it can begin at different ages. It could usually start around 11 to 14, but it can be as early as 8 in some children. So my son has just turned 15 and he is now 6'2". We measured him again the other day, and he's been at 6 foot or over for at least the last 12 months. And he's definitely been a young man, but in a man's body. And, you know, this growth and development will happen at different rates for children. And he certainly his body changed at different rates compared to his classmates. So whilst this is normal, a normal thing to go through, he may not know this. So I need to give him lots of reassurance and acceptance and love. And I know that this is important for him during this time. Sleep, like all of us, our teens need lots of sleep, just over 9 hours each night, and not getting enough good quality sleep can affect their mood, their impulse control, their memory, and how they perform at school or if they're trying to hold down a job. And I'm not sure about you, but sometimes my son has a bit of trouble getting out of bed in the morning, and it's a real thing for him. And I know he's not just being lazy. And it's because melatonin, which prompts sleep, is now being released later during these teen years, and he doesn't feel tired until late at night. So he tends to go to sleep later and therefore wake up later. And obviously this makes getting to school sometimes a little bit hard. And yes, we'll argue about it, but I just need to keep reminding him about the importance of sleep. And the Raising Children's Network has a really great handout that explains this, and we'll provide that in that follow-up link for you. So there's lots of things happening with the brain in terms of brain development at this point in their life as well. And I'm going to use Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain to explain how the human brain develops from the bottom up, starting with the brain stem. So I'm not sure if you can all see this, but hopefully I'll do a good enough job in explaining it so you can visualize it. So first of all, if you make a fist with your hand, tucking your thumb in underneath your fingers, and if you think of this as the hand model of the brain. Now, if you look at your wrist, think of this as the brain stem, the very early part of the brain that is developed in utero. So the brain stem, this is responsible for things like our breathing, our swallowing, and the fight and flight response. Now, if you look at your thumb tucked in underneath the fingers, this represents the limbic system, and it's the part of the brain that controls our emotions. And it's developed next as the more complex part of the brain, or the cortex, grows up and around that, and then finishing with our fingers, which represent the prefrontal cortex. And this is the last part of the brain that's to be developed. And this is responsible for complex thinking. So I'm going to try the poll function, and I'm going to pop a question up. And if you'd just like to pop your responses down to that poll. The question that you hopefully will see is, at what age is the human brain fully developed? So hopefully you're seeing that question now, and you can pop your responses in. Lots of you have said 20 to 25. Over 40% of you, it's fluctuating a little bit, said 25 to 30. Some of us have said never. Yes, sometimes we may think that with certain members of our family. We wonder whenever it will be fully developed. That's great. Thank you so much for participating in that. And clearly some of you are well aware of this. I'll just close that down. And yes, it's the brain is fully developed into the late 20s, around about 26 for females and about 28 for boys. And this can go a long way to explaining why our teenagers, even though they may look like adults, don't always act like adults. It's not that they won't consider consequences and act maturely, it's just that they can't yet. Right, I'm going to show you a clip by Dr. Siegel, who takes this a little bit further and explains the adolescent brain and what else is happening to them apart from puberty. So just give me a moment while I bring that up for you.
The adolescent period is absolutely amazing. People often give it a negative approach, saying, oh, it's a time where adolescents are going to lose their mind, or they're just immature, or raging hormones drive them crazy. These are all not only wrong, but they're myths that mislead us and actually disempower us. Whether we're adults or adolescents, they actually give us the wrong message, and they make it so there's nothing we can do. So what is actually the truth? The truth is that instead of raging hormones, what's happening is we have remodeling in the brain. In ways we never could have predicted, we now understand two big things are happening in the brain. Things you as an adult can support adolescents in developing well, and if you're an adolescent, you actually can use this to help your brain grow in an optimal way. What are those two things? The brain is pruning itself. So imagine that in childhood, you're growing like a tree and establishing all these branches and all these leaves are growing. In the brain, that means connections among the basic cell, the neuron, called synapses, are being established. And you're soaking in the knowledge of the world, and that's beautiful. The tree is just growing, growing, growing. But then what happens that surprised everyone is the brain begins to prune itself. You start carving away some of those leaves, some of the smaller branches, even some of the larger branches. And the reason for the pruning is to specialize the brain. While the child is developing in ways that are really generalized, learning everything they can about everything they can, an adolescent is going to begin to find their passion, to actually find things they like, things they really love doing, and to drive their development in that way. So pruning is actually a use it or lose it principle underneath it. That if you don't use something, you're going to lose it. So if you like sports or like dancing or like music, do those things so you continue to establish those circuits. The second thing that happens in the remodeling adolescent brain is myelin formation. Myelin is a healthy sheath that allows connected neurons to communicate with each other in a much more effective way. How? It's 100 times faster, the signal that's sent down a neuron to communicate with another neuron, 100 times faster, and after it fires off, it's 30 times shorter the resting period that happens. 30 times 100 is 3,000. So when you've put down myelin, you've made your neurons communicate 3,000 times more effectively. That's a great thing. Now the great thing too is that you as an adolescent can actually use the focus of your attention to be aware of your emotions, aware of other people, to be engaging in activities, to be doing things with your thoughts that actually reinforce the parts of your brain you want to hold on to. So the good news about the remodeling story is that a field called neuroplasticity, how the brain responds to experience, shows us that what you do with your mind can change the activity and therefore the structure of your brain.
So wasn't that really interesting about the pruning and the myelination that happens? Sorry, I'll just move all my screens over now. Hopefully you were able to hear that clear enough. So I found it really helpful to better understand my son more, knowing more about what's actually going on in the brain at this point in this phase of life. And so when he says things like, I don't know, sometimes he really doesn't know. So I try and be more specific with the questions that I ask, such as, so what was the best part about your day, buddy? Rather than just simply, how was your day? Otherwise, I'm more likely to get just a grunt. So this might make him seem a bit childlike at times, I guess. And I understand this now because I know his prefrontal cortex is still developing. But the brain changes are really positive in the long run because they mean that our young people will be able to make more complex decisions and solve problems and identify risks and plan ahead. It also helps to think in abstracts and to help them understand more complex ideas. And it's also helpful for them to work out their own values and their own beliefs and their views about the world. So my son, he still needs practice in expressing these views respectfully and taking other people's point of view at times, but I know that that will come. So you may have heard that teens are experimenting, or they're taking lots of unsafe risks. And I have a teaching background, and I taught a number of years in the outdoor ed area, and I've worked with lots of teens, and I understand they need to take risks. However, they still need to assess the risks, because their impulse control or their ability to think through consequences of their choices is still developing, as we've just heard, even into late adolescence. So in the outdoor ed environment, we gave students the opportunities to new experiences, which were really important for learning skills and building confidence and challenging them, you know, like abseiling for the first time, or whitewater rafting for the first time perhaps, or bushwalking, those kind of activities. And so we had many discussions with the students to support them about taking considered risks, and to help them to think about the safety and the risks and the benefits as well, whilst allowing them to have the experiences which challenged and extended them. And so opening up these conversations really helps parents to move away from avoiding experiences, preventing teens from avoiding experiences which they'll likely want to try out at some point anyway. And it opens up the conversations then also to help teach them the necessary skills to think through risks and to keep themselves and others safe. So they're also going through perhaps new and intense feelings that can change really quickly. My daughter, who's now 18, she can be quite moody at times, and she experiences high and low feelings and intensity in those feelings too, and can be quick to react. And she has a really strong sense of justice, especially for the environment, which I really admire in her. But I still need to help her to practice in expressing her feelings respectfully at times. And through all of this, their friends are everything. And this is because they have a strong need to feel accepted and they belong, and this drives a great deal of their behaviour. The positives are that having friends helps young people gain those valuable social skills and to share ideas and to work out their values and identity. And they often want to spend more time with their friends than family. And that's quite okay, and that's quite normal, and try not to take it personally. But it can also be really upsetting for them when things go wrong or if they fall out with their friends. And so with both of my teenage kids, I try to get to know their friends and welcome them into our home. Sometimes I might not have been really happy about their choice of friend, but instead of criticising because I knew that would cause pushback, I helped them to think things through, and would say things like, well, okay, what do you think will happen if Johnny continues to act this way at school? Or what do you think will happen if Max continues to turn up late to footy practice? Things like that. And sometimes things went wrong with friends, so I tried to help them think about what their own values are and what's important to them and work out what they can do. And my kids found it helpful to have a number of friendship groups, both inside and outside of school. And this sense of belonging for young people, it may come from community or volunteering for work. So my kids have volunteered for charity events, for the sporting canteen on the weekend, those types of things. And they're really great to build their sense of purpose and belonging, and it also supports that positive mental health and well-being. So with all of this going on for our young people, let's have a look what they need from us. So we can help our young person by showing our love and understanding, model the behaviour that we expect. So have a think about what they might be seeing. So if you're a household that's used to yelling and shouting, you know, perhaps it's helpful to think about what our young people are learning from that. And, you know, try and model staying calm, no matter how you might feel inside, and hold back from reacting to emotions, even if you have to take a short breath yourself or you know, leave the room. You're actually then demonstrating to our young people how to do this. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. And be dependable and respectful. Be easy to listen to. Be easy to talk to, Be easy to talk to. So if you're relaxed and easy to talk to, your young person will be more likely to trust you. They'll be more likely to share their thoughts with you, their feelings and ideas, and hopefully they'll be more likely to come to you when they have a big issue or a problem. And inspire them to achieve their best, and support them to make healthy and safe decisions. And respect their privacy. This is really important, as we've heard, and as you've probably experienced in your own homes, in terms of those changes in their body and what's going on for them. It's developmentally normal for them to need their own time and space. And respecting privacy creates that trust, and that's fundamental to developing really strong relationships. But, you know, most of all, try and stay connected. And this is a really important takeaway from this webinar. Try and prioritise spending time with your young person. They are probably going to be more wanting to spend time with their peers. So try and keep that connection with them. Try and find out what works for you and your young person, and keep communicating well with them. And this will actually make your parenting easier in the long run. If you put effort into building your relationship, you're setting a great foundation that will make it easier to deal with issues as they come up in the future. So my young man, 6'2" man, he's not a big communicator, but I've found that getting out and shooting hoops with him or kicking the football, that's when he's most relaxed. That's when he's in his happy place. And that's when he tends to open up about, you know, perhaps what's been going on with friends or things that are happening at school. Whereas my 18-year-old, she's always been a pretty intense communicator, wants to sit down, happy to eyeball you, you know, make eye contact and have a really deep and meaningful conversation that way. So find what works for your young person and just try and make that time to stay connected to them. So try and create that time and space for conversation, at least the opportunity to talk, even if it doesn't happen the way that you would hope. Make yourself available no matter what. Give your full attention. Again, with my young man, I've learned over time to just try and stop what I'm doing if he starts to have a conversation just out of the blue. So it's really important to try and give your full attention if you can. And really listen to them about what's going on with them. Try and work out what's going on behind their words. It may help to use phrases like, I noticed you seem a bit quiet or a bit upset or a bit down on the way home, on the ride home from school today. I wonder if there's something going on with your friend to make her say or do those things at school today, that kind of thing. And persist. Don't give up if they don't want to talk to you the first time, or if they put you off, or if they if they say that they don't want to talk to you at that point in time. Just keep being available. And if they really don't want to talk to you, or if it gets really hard, make sure they have other trusted adults to talk to. It's really important that they expand that support network beyond the family. So it could be another relative, it could be a friend, it could be a teacher at school, it could be a sporting coach. So the more connections that they have with trustworthy adults, the better. But if you are really concerned, always seek professional help. And most of all, just try and have fun together. You're not going to always get it right, and things might seem a bit awkward or go awry sometimes. You know, don't take it too seriously and just try and have a bit of fun. So we've talked a lot about support and the importance of supporting your teenager, but there's also something else that's equally important. And that's setting expectations, boundaries, and limits for our young people. It's really important for them because it helps them to feel safe and secure and to know what is expected. So in this slide, I'm going to help explain this by using the social discipline window to illustrate how important both structure and support is for our young people and how this can influence our parenting. So as I've mentioned, support is important for our young people as they develop. Equally important is structure, and you'll notice that the arrows point across and represent a continuum from low to high for both support and structure. And the model separates the graph into 4 sections. And whilst we spend time in each quadrant as parents, there's one quadrant which is preferable for most of our time. So the first quadrant shows where there is no support or structure. So sometimes as a parent, we might be feeling unwell, we might be depressed, we could be grieving as an example. And so in regards to our parenting, it's really difficult in times like this to provide support and structure, and we might become what's known as disengaged. And in situations like this, we may need to be seeking help from friends or family or professionals during these times. The next quadrant is where there's high support but without structure. So if my daughter is unwell, I may choose to do things for her, or sometimes my son, who plays a lot of sport, he's in senior school, he might be really exhausted from all his sporting commitments. So I'm going to give him some slack sometimes and not expect, everything to be done, all the time. And this could be known as permissive parenting. The top left-hand quadrant is where we have high structure but with low support. So if a teen or a child is about to run out onto the road, you might yell, "Stop!" at them. You're not going to negotiate with them. You're not going to seek their input. You're going to tell them what they need to do so that they are safe. So when we parent to a teen, this is authoritarian parenting. And you may even relate to this style of parenting from perhaps how you were parented in the past. So these 3 quadrants, whilst understandable at times, they're not ideal for ongoing parenting to maintain relationships with healthy boundaries. Too much time spent in any one of these particular quadrants and we're going to start to see imbalances. So the top right-hand quadrant is a balance of both high support with high structure. So it's a way of parenting with a young person. A supportive parent is the most effective way to parent or in fact handle challenging times in any human relationship. And we try to spend the majority of our parenting here. And Phil mentioned the Parenting SA site has a number of parenting easy guides, and the one that's called What is My Parenting Style unpacks these different parenting styles in more detail. And again, we'll provide you with that link in the follow-up email. So how we set those boundaries and limits is really important, and it works best when this is done before issues arise and in a way where your young person feels involved and that they've been listened to and that they've had a say. And family meetings might be a great way to do this. And this could be something that's new for you, but regular get-togethers such as the pizza night or the family Sunday roast, whatever it might be, can be great times to discuss things like your family expectations before a crisis or conflict arises, and to explore what kind of a family you want to be, what might be important to you. What are your family values? Is it respect? Is it kindness? Is it how you'll treat one another, such as no hitting or no name calling, that kind of thing. And teens are more likely to work out how they can stick to family values and expectations when they feel involved in that process, when they feel listened to and that they've had a say in what happens in the family. And you're ultimately responsible as the parent, and your opinions are really important too. So make sure the teen has a voice, and so do you as the parent. Some families are often surprised to how well family meetings work and how much children and teens enjoy being involved in that process and how it improves the overall communication. And this is another great way of staying connected and to build those relationships. And persist, don't give up. If it doesn't work the first time, remember, change always takes time. And we have a family meetings quick tip and activity sheet. And this might be a useful tool for you to use with your family if family meetings perhaps is something new to you. And we'll provide that again in that follow-up email. But even when we have great communication, sometimes things just don't go so well. And I'm going to hand you over now to Eve. So thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, Fee. Hi, everyone. I'm Eve, and I'm going to talk to you this evening about conflict. So conflict between parents and young people is common, whether it's an actual argument or something that needs to be resolved. Parents and young people often have different views and difficult times. It happens to all families. For teens, they're trying out new ideas, they're expressing their opinions, and they're pushing boundaries, and that's their job. It's part of being an adolescent. It's part of them working out who they are and what their values are. So as a parent, try really hard not to take this personally. They're expressing their ideas and opinions with people they feel safe with. And much of the solution when things do go wrong is in that relationship you've invested with your young person. Being proactive and planning can be really helpful, as well as giving your young person choice, control, and options as much as possible. I want to share with you that we have a local Adelaide psychologist called Kiralee Smout, and she has a great video on the Parenting SA website, and it's about managing conflict with teens. So have a look, it might be helpful for you. But right now we're going to have a look at ourselves about how we can manage conflict with teens. So I'm going to take you through a step-by-step process to guiding behaviour and dealing with difficult issues in a positive way. And this is in line with our supportive parenting. So the first part is staying calm. We need to calm ourselves first. We might have got angry or upset or frustrated. It's really important to try not to react from those emotions. It really doesn't help anybody. So we might need to remove ourselves and say, you know what, I'm really cross right now. I'm going to talk about this later once I've calmed down. And making sure your young person is calm too, because when people's emotions are high, we can't discuss things. We need to take that time to really calm down. And if we go back to the hand model of the brain, what we know that happens is when we have big emotions, and teenagers will have big emotions, as we all know, the prefrontal cortex, it becomes disconnected, and Dan Siegel calls this flipping the lid. So there's no communication, no connection between your emotional part of your brain and your prefrontal cortex. So we need to reconnect that. So we do that by pausing, taking a breath, going out of the room, going outside, going for a walk, counting to 10, whatever it is that helps us and helps our young person to find that space of calm. That's really important. It might take half an hour to calm down. It might take longer. But taking that time to find that calm before we move on is really important. The next step is communicate. So once you're both calm, listen to your young person. Show that you understand their feelings, what went wrong, what they were trying to achieve, and what's important to them, even if you don't agree. They're young, and they're going to get things wrong and they're going to make mistakes. So try and be patient. They're just learning. They might be doing what's developmentally normal for their age. Sometimes feeling that someone understands and feeling listened to is all we need, even us as adults. And that can really help diffuse a situation. It does not mean necessarily that we agree with them or condone their behaviour, but you are acknowledging their feelings their intentions and their needs. So it's about separating the feelings from the behaviour. For example, it's okay to feel angry or frustrated or jealous, but it's not okay to hit in our family or name call or whatever it is that's important to your family. So be curious, what's getting in their way? What's underneath their behaviour? And what can we as parents do to help? What's going on for them? So showing them empathy. So take that time to really listen respectfully. Then we problem solve. So we invite them to come up with ideas to resolve the situation. And this is key. Ask them, what do you think will work here? What do you think I should do? What could I do as a parent? If you were in my situation as a parent, what would you do? So we're trying to really get them to think about both sides of the equation and listen to their ideas. This is something we do together. Agree on a solution that works for both of you. So when young people have a say in the solution, they're more committed to working at it and helping to make it work. Negotiating with a teen is easier if your family is used to involving teens in family discussions, for example, in everyday parenting. So try and practice this as often as you can by including them in as many discussions as you can. Simple things like negotiating a trip to the city on the bus, for example. You can discuss how are you going to keep safe? Where are you going to go? How will you communicate with me when you're out and about? What will you do if things don't go as planned? What buses are you going to catch? And what time are you going to be home? Discuss this and then let them have a go. Ask them is there anything they'll need to make it work? So this doesn't mean that either of you get their own way. You both need to agree. But remember, the social discipline window is about support and structure. You both need to feel comfortable with the agreement and that your teenager is safe. So letting a teen have a say doesn't mean they get their way. What it does mean is that you both have been heard and that your views have been considered. And then we reflect. If things don't work out as planned, and they won't always, listen to what went wrong. Expect that it won't go right every time and they'll make mistakes. We make mistakes too, and this is part of learning and practicing taking responsibility. So be patient with them whilst being consistent and strong if these things are important to you. See what you can do together to adapt or make a new agreement and talk about why this agreement could work better. And if this process is new to you and your family, you might like to write things down. As you get more accustomed to this way of problem solving together, it becomes more natural and an easier way to sort things out. This is also a time to consider repair if it's needed. So helping your young person understand and practice that repairing relationships when damage has been done to someone or something is really important. Even if it's involved hurting you, role model how to repair the relationship yourself too. So following this process respects you and your young person, acknowledges each other's thoughts and feelings, and works for the human needs for competency, connection, and autonomy. It works better than punishments and consequences and telling young people what to do. And we can think about an acronym CCPR to help you in the moment. And I'll go into that now. So this acronym, CCPR, is for the positive approach to guiding behaviour. And just like CPR to save a life in an emergency, this CCPR for parenting can make a real difference in those really tricky times when we're flustered and we can't think of what to do. If you can remember CCPR, it will help guide you. And the 2 C's just shows how important that C for calm really, really is. The more you use this approach, the easier it becomes. You can practice it in everyday situations so that when issues do arise, you're more comfortable with the process. So let's have a go at applying CCPR to a common situation. Let's have a explore siblings arguing. And siblings argue about big things, about small things. Sometimes it works, often it doesn't, and it can be a really difficult time for parents. So let's have a think about 2 teens, maybe they're arguing over television and arguing over who gets to watch what on TV again. The first part is C for calm. You might be feeling frustrated or cross or angry. This is happening again. It's really fired you up. So it's really important here, calm yourself. Remember, that's us, that's our lid flipping. So calm ourselves first. Pause. Take a deep breath. Go outside if we need to. If they're fighting over the remote and the conflict is escalating, you may need to hold the remote or turn the TV off to help them find that calm. So we're going to resist that urge to yell back or punish them by taking away the remote in anger or turning off the TV. This is about just calming the situation. We don't want to be focusing on punishment. We're not resolving anything at this point in time. We just want everybody to get into a space that we can move to communicating. So we take the time it needs for everyone to get calm. So if your teen is cross or angry or frustrated and they leave the room in frustration, that's okay. But invite them back to join in the next step once they are calm. The next C is communicate. Let them know you understand and that you get that they both want to watch the TV show. You know it's their favourite and you really hear them. Listen to each of them about what's going on for them. Empathise and understand that, disagreeing is okay. We're not going to agree with each other about everything. That's life. But be firm that hitting and fighting isn't okay. Remind them of your family values here. So it might be about respect and listening or whatever family value applies here. And be firm here and clear about boundaries and expectations. So, for example, I expect you both to talk through this rather than hit each other. Being very clear about what's okay and what's not. It's okay not to agree, but how we resolve it needs to be very clear. P is for problem solve. So ask for their ideas. How do you think we can resolve this situation, guys? Value each and allow each of them to contribute their ideas and thoughts and discuss them. So then we negotiate an agreement together that works for everybody, including you as the parent. Remember, it's not about getting your own way, it's about compromise so that everyone can be okay. And the more you do this, the easier and more normal it becomes. And then we reflect. Expect that it may not work the first time. Expect that it may take time for them to learn to share with their siblings. They might have had a terrible day at school and they've just hit, that was the last straw for them. We need to just help them reflect on what's going on for them. Remember, home with siblings is a safe place for them to learn how to consider other people's feelings and work together. So help them consider, is there any relationship repairing that needs to happen? Again, discuss this. Ask for their thoughts and ideas of how they can make things right again. So this simple acronym, CCPR, can really help in the moment when everything's feeling all chaotic and emotions are heightened. It can help you work through everyday situations as well, together with your young person. And we completely understand that you may not have the time to stop everything every time something happens, but if you follow this process as often as you can, you will notice a change, and behaviour change takes time and effort. And this might be a different way to what you're used to, and that's okay. So let's have a look at how this approach is different. So on the screen, you will see a slide from Dr. Stuart Shanker, who's an international psychology researcher and professor. So what it does, it explains the concept that behaviour is actually a form of communication. Every behaviour that we see at the tip of the iceberg actually has a reason below the surface why it's happened in the first place. So Dr. Shanker identifies 5 domains that can cause stress and that they have impacts on behaviours that we see. So they are biological, so that's their teenager's age. As we've discussed, teenagers don't have a fully developed brain yet. And so they're not always able to regulate their emotions without an unexpected or a negative behaviour. So they might be thinking, I'm upset because I don't understand. It might be emotional, so that's their feelings. We know teenagers have big feelings and they can be confusing and they can show up in lots of different behaviours. They might be thinking, I feel weird and I just don't know how to act. It could be cognitive. That's their thinking and learning and their ability to concentrate for an amount of time. So it could be, I'm frustrated because I just don't get it. It could be social. How do I manage those difficult social situations that are so important as a teenager? They might be feeling left out or isolated. And pro-social, which is about all human beings being wired to act in socially acceptable ways, so that when teenagers don't, it can actually add to those big feelings and then therefore add to those big behaviours. I didn't mean to act like this. So the way a teenager reacts to each of these domains in times of stress can cause an unexpected or a negative behaviour. As a parent, if we can look underneath the behaviour to understand and respond to that cause, then we can, and understand that stress, we can help teach our teenagers how to manage it the next time and ongoing. So this image encourages us to be a submarine and look underneath the surface to reduce or manage those stresses rather than reacting to the behaviour that we're seeing. The boat at the top holds punishment. So that's, for example, is losing a privilege for a teenager, and rewards that may help the tip in the moment, but it doesn't actually get to the underlying cause. So often we see those behaviours happening again and again. So when we use things like punishments and rewards to stop a behaviour, we actually miss an opportunity to connect, to understand, and to teach. To be curious. What's causing the behaviour? What's going on for them? What life skills do they still need to learn? What's getting in their way? So let's have a little look at another example. Let's have a look at curfews or not sticking to them. It's another example that parents of teens experience on a regular basis and often struggle with. So let's first consider what could be going on underneath the behaviour. If your teen has missed their curfew and has turned up at home late, although absolutely understandable, you may want to react out of frustration or anger because underneath you're actually feeling anxiety and maybe fear that your teenager, maybe they weren't safe. And this is perfectly normal to feel these feelings. But to work at a teenager not missing their curfew again and again, let's first look at why they missed it in the first place. So once you've calmed and told them it's not okay to be home late because you care about them and you were worried, be curious and find out why. Ask them, what happened? Maybe they just didn't think or realise the time. Maybe they were the only one who had to be home at a particular time or this early. Maybe they felt peer pressure to stay longer. Maybe they were relying on a friend to get them home and had car troubles. When we take the time to connect and empathise, we move towards helping our teens with the underlying cause of their behaviour and they feel safe and secure in their relationship with you. We may not be able to work out why, and they may not know themselves, but saying something like, buddy, I can see something's up. I'm here for you if you want to talk about it, opens the door to helpful conversations and building trust. Being curious avoids going straight to punishments, including parent-imposed consequences that can damage the relationship and can result in those power struggles. And these types of punishments push against those teens' natural desire to find their own identity and their need for autonomy and independence. And it also risks that the teen will focus on the punishment and not actually on what happened. So they don't learn what to do next time, except maybe be sneakier. So when we provide support with structure by setting fair and reasonable limits and boundaries that are discussed with them, explained and intended to teach and keep our young people safe and seek understanding of what might have got in the way of the young person choosing better behaviours, we open the opportunity to connect, to provide support and help them understand what they can do the next time the situation happens, to work together Come up with a solution that works for both of you. Is it setting a timer on their phone? Is it negotiating another time limit? Is it helping them know the words to use in a situation that is peer pressure? Discuss these together and make a clear plan. This maintains your expectations about curfews in your family whilst building skills and understanding with the team. And then reflect the next time you expect them home at an agreed time. Were they able to meet the curfew this time? What worked? What could have been done better or differently? So how could this work for you and your young person? The reality is that not always, but sometimes these conversations are really tricky and difficult. So using the steps in the positive approach can help guide you. If it is an issue or a conflict or something that is big and it really needs time and energy to discuss it thoroughly, think about where and when. You don't want to be too busy or uncomfortable. You want to be able to give them your full attention. So plan ahead so that both you and your young person have the time and the space to talk about it. And think about how you, those times where you best do communicate. Is it shooting hoops? Is it going for a walk on the beach? Is it cooking a meal together? Think about those times where you both feel comfortable in a relaxed environment. Try asking your young person to talk first, inviting their perspective and valuing their ideas. State your point of view. Remember to let them know both the what and the why. For example, I'd like you to text me when you arrive so that I know you're safe. Try not to dismiss ideas. Try and consider them all. And remember parenting CCPR, calm, communicate, problem solve, and reflect. We've created 2 templates for you all to help you practice this approach. They're called Resolving Situations and Reflections, and we'll provide these for you in our follow-up email. So remember, working together with teens, understanding the changes going on for them, their need for relatedness, competency, that's their feelings of achievement, and autonomy, that's them wanting to do things for themselves, can make the whole family a happier place to be. I'm going to pass back to Phil now, who's going to summarise.
Thanks, Eve, and also thanks, Fee, for taking us through those segments. And I'll be doing a bit of a wrap-up here, but just before I do, I've noticed we haven't yet had any questions submitted through the chat, so if a few people would like to maybe put through a question or two, and Eve might have some time then to have a look at that and be able to follow up when we get to the final conclusion. As we've talked throughout the webinar, there are a few things that I really, I guess, just want to highlight that are really important to remember. That our role as parents is changing, and if we can see our role as one of that influencer to support our young people on their way to becoming that young, confident adult. Fee talked a lot about communication and relationships and the importance of connection, and that will make things easier in the long run. And if we can try and prioritise giving our young people responsibility, where we involve them in that sharing of decision making, that sharing the power that I talked about, being involved in the problem solving, that can help them develop those skills. And underpinning this is what Eve was chatting about with the CCPR, is if we can stay calm and think about how we respond before we say and do anything, because what we do changes what our young person does. And remember too that change does take time, so really be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself, be patient with you and your young person. And part of that is looking after yourself too. So if you can focus on yourself and your well-being, because you matter and it's important to look after yourself. And also if things are getting tricky and you're needing some support, I really encourage you to go and get help straight away if you need it for you and also for your young person. And please, no matter what, remember that you are the adult and the parent, and you are such an important influence in your young person's life. So we're getting close to the end now, and we really hope that the information has been helpful to you. We will provide the links that have been referred to, handouts, templates in the follow-up email, and also too, we're going to be providing a feedback form, a survey. If you are able to, please make some time. It only take a couple of minutes, but it will help us with our, I guess, reviewing of our programs, and that feedback will be very valued. Please take note of any of the information that on the sheet that we send out with all the places that you can get support to from. On the back of the Parent Easy guides, are just a few of some of the resources that are out there in the community. So we recommend having a look at that, because everyone does need help sometimes, and you and your family are really important. So again, thank you so much for your time this evening, and I'll hand over to Eve.
Oops, my video is playing up. Sorry, everybody. I'm going to just keep going. So there was a question here about, oh goodness, sorry, I've got my scroll button. It's flicking around. So somebody was saying they have trouble with verbal aggression from their team, which precludes an opportunity to discuss. He won't open up. It's quite challenging situation. So first thing is about making sure you're calm, that CCPR, make sure you're in a space that you're calm, that you can approach your team, try to notice when he or she's feeling calm, and try and just keep offering those opportunities to connect. Try to notice when he or she's feeling in that space to want to connect. So is it playing computer games? If it's playing computer games, get down on their level and play a game with them. Hey buddy, what game are you playing? So trying not to discuss things just yet, just trying to build that connection and keep letting your teenager know that you're there for connection. And when they do show and give you an opening or show an interest in talking, try to stop what you're doing and give them your attention at that moment, even if it might be inconvenient for you. If you can, during that time, stop and listen. That can help, build that ability to talk. We don't know what's going on. There might be other things going on for the teenager that's causing him or her to feel frustrated and anxious. So trying to be curious. If they're not talking to you, maybe there's other people they might feel comfortable talking to, whether it be a school counsellor, a family friend, a coach, somebody in your wider support network. Teenagers won't always want to talk to their parents. That's normal, but helping them know that there is other avenues of support. Inviting them, just saying, hey buddy, I can see something's up, and trying to invite that conversation so that you can then move to the problem solving if there is a problem that they want to discuss. So hopefully that idea of looking at their support network, where are those avenues for connecting with them, where they don't feel like the spotlight's on them, try to find those relaxed situations as much as possible. Whoops, I'm going the wrong way. Someone said, I find texting kids, even if they're in the next room or on the couch, helps me break the ice. Great idea. Whatever works, I think that's a really, really wonderful idea. Thank you. And I did see another, what age should we start giving them more freedom to go unsupervised at shops? My daughter complains that I'm too strict. I get the same thing. And I guess that comes from a place of wanting to protect. And that's okay as us as parents. We need to feel comfortable that our children and young people are safe. That's our role as parents. So the things I'd be looking for is, have they shown responsibility in other areas? Can they talk to you about how to keep safe? Have they got access to, devices that can keep us in contact with them if something does go wrong? Are they going with someone you trust? So maybe there might be an older teenager that you trust that has done this before. Maybe it's a sibling who you've built that with. So giving you a specific age is not so easy. It's more about you knowing your young person and what they're capable of and what they've shown in the past, that it builds your confidence that they're able to handle that situation. But when we do, when we need to be able to offer our young people opportunities to be independent, to show responsibility, to be able to feel competent that they can do it for themselves, because that's really what they're craving and really want to do. So find those opportunities so that they can prove themselves to you, that they can show you that, hey, I do have the skills, I am responsible, and that might help you feel more comfortable about going to the shops. Maybe a first step might be that you're at the shops too, but you're just in different shops and you agree to go off for half an hour and then come back. So maybe it's some baby steps that help you build that sense of trust and confidence in each other. I'm aware that we are over time. I'm sorry, I did notice we had a couple of other questions. I'll do my very best to follow up on those. Thank you all very much this evening for your time. We would love your feedback on the webinar this evening, and also if there's anything you would like further information on. Please enjoy your adolescents and your young people, and thank you very much for joining us tonight. Goodbye.